What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. Every once in a while, Russian propaganda stops pretending. It drops the euphemisms, throws away the diplomatic language, and just blurts out what the Kremlin usually prefers to keep between the lines. And when that happens, the result is not strength or confidence. It's panic. Raw, unfiltered panic dressed as imperial nostalgia. Vladimir Solovyov's most recent meltdown on state television is exactly that kind of moment. Not a mistake, not a slip of the tongue, not just a loudmouth TV host exaggerating for ratings, no. This was an attempt to see if the nation is ready for something new. A test of how openly Russia can now talk about expanding war, erasing sovereignty, and treating entire regions like chessboard squares that can be flipped whenever Moscow feels insecure. When the man with direct access to state TV audiences calmly argues that Russia should consider new special military operations in Armenia and Central Asia, dismiss international law as meaningless, and openly describe independent countries as our Asia, well, something fundamentally has shifted in the minds of those people. This is no longer about Ukraine alone. This is about the mindset of a regime that learns nothing from its humiliation, learned nothing from catastrophic losses, and still believes violence is a substitute for relevance. So today, let's talk about all of this. What Solovyov actually said, why it matters, why it first terrified Armenia and Central Asia and then made them chuckle, and why, in reality, it exposes Russia's weakness more than its power. Solovyov did not shout. He did not rant like a madman foaming at the mouth. That is the most disturbing part and very unusual of him. He spoke calmly, confidently, almost philosophically, as if discussing some kind of weather report, patterns and football tactics. According to him, international law is irrelevant at this point. The international order means nothing. Russia should openly define its own sphere of influence and act within it however it sees fit. Armenia, important and irrelevant at the same time. Central Asia, now it's apparently our Asia. Venezuela and Ukraine were merely examples showing that rules only applied to those too weak to break them. This was not some random rambling. This was not Telegram trash talk. This aired on state television during prime time on a program that exists precisely to transmit Kremlin-approved thinking to the public. Solovyov has played this role for years. He's not a rogue element. He is the megaphone. When he says something this explicit, it is because the environment now allows it. Because someone, somewhere at the top, maybe all the way at the top, decided that the Russian audience is ready to hear this openly. And what he revealed is stunning in its arrogance. Countries reduced to points, sovereignty reduced to just formality, the entire population discussed as security problems to be solved. Armenia, a country that still formally maintains alliance ties with Russia, was spoken of as a possession slipping away. Central Asia, with millions of people and their own histories, cultures and political realities, dismissed as a backyard that needs discipline. This is a colonial thinking stripped bare. Not even wrapped in patriotic mythology anymore. Not talk of bratskие народы, which is basically brotherhood nations. Not talks of shared history or mutual defense, nothing. No, just raw entitlement. Ours, ours, ours. And if they resist, then the force is justified. So far only one country has been named openly, Armenia, supposed Putin's friend. But why this specific country, and what was the reaction of Armenians when they heard this clown yelling? Let's talk about it in our next chapter. Armenia did not shrug this off, not at first at least. And this reaction alone tells you how seriously these words were taken. The Armenian foreign ministry summoned the Russian ambassador and handed him a formal note of protest expressing deep indignation. Diplomatic language, yes, but beneath it, initial concern and anger. Because Armenians understand Russian political culture way too well. They know that when propaganda escalates like this, it is not accidental. For Yerevan, Solovyov's words were not theoretical. Armenia has already watched Russia fail to honor its security guarantees. It has watched Moscow stand aside during real crises, offering words instead of protection. And now, suddenly, a Kremlin's mouthpiece is floating the idea that Armenia itself might require another special military operation. Not as an ally, not as a partner, but as a problem requiring solution. That is the fundamental initial rupture of this alliance. You cannot maintain friendly relations with a state whose television hosts casually debates invading you. You cannot pretend trust exists when sovereignty is openly mocked on air. Armenia's reaction was not emotional, it was defensive, a signal that lines were crossed. You can say whatever you want, but those words will never be forgotten, and the response was not limited to Armenia. Across Central Asia, journalists, analysts, and politicians reacted with alarm, because they recognized the pattern. First comes rhetorical dehumanization, then comes historical revisionism, and finally comes security concerns. And then, well, as you guessed it, tanks roll the border. That's what happened in Georgia, that's what happened in Crimea, and then, well, came February 2022. All following exactly the same pattern we are seeing right now once again. What about the rest of the Central Asian countries then? Should they be prepared? Let's try to answer this question in our next chapter. One of the most important reactions came from within Central Asia itself. Uzbek journalist Ilyos Safarov nailed it when he said that this was not sensationalism. It was a political signal, psychological preparation, conditioning the audience to accept the idea that violence against neighbors is normal, justified, and even necessary. This is precisely how Russian propaganda operates. It does not jump straight to war. It softens the ground first. It just repeats the same idea from different angles. Sovereignty is symbolic, international law is fake, borders are negotiable, instability near Russia is a threat. And so that eventually Russia has the right to respond however it wants. By the time real action happens, the audience has already been trained not to ask why. Then political scientist Sherzad Kvadrat Khodja, hopefully I pronounced the name correctly, called the rhetoric colonial and dehumanizing. That's not exaggeration. It is the language of empire. The idea that independent states can simply be folded into a sphere of influence by declaration alone. That their consent is relevant. That their people are background noise. And then another analyst, Shuhrat Rasul, went further, calling it a thinly veiled call for occupation. And I mean, think about it, he's right. Strip away the euphemisms, special military operation, and that is exactly what it is. Occupation, control, submission. What makes this especially dangerous is the timing. Russia is not speaking from a position of strength. It is speaking from a position of frustration. Ukraine did not fall. The blitzkrieg failed. 3 days turned into years. Casualties stacked into the hundreds of thousands. And instead of reflection, the response is yet another invasion, expansionist fantasy. As if opening more front lines could somehow fix the disaster of the first one. Now let's ask the most basic question that Russian propaganda never does. With what army are they planning to launch another special military operation? With what resources? With what legitimacy? Russia is already bleeding in Ukraine. It struggles to maintain manpower levels. It hunts men on the streets, it blackmails, deceives, traps them into contracts that have no end. Recruitment bonuses climb higher. Well, not that much anymore, but sometimes they do. While actual payments shrink. Volunteers are not lining up, they are being dragged in. And yet, Solovyov speaks as if Russia has infinite reserves of obedient soldiers ready to march into Armenia or Central Asia or whenever they're told to. This is pure delusion, pure and simple. And then there's the geopolitical fantasy. Invade Armenia or a Central Asian country and then what? Total isolation, new sanctions, even deeper economic collapse. Former friends suddenly realizing that Russia is not a partner but a predator. I mean, who would trust Moscow after that? Who would sign agreements knowing that they can be shredded the moment Russian TV decides that your country is historically important and misplaced? The irony is very thick. Russian propaganda loves to portray the United States as the ultimate villain, trampling international law whenever it pleases. And yet, here is Solovyov openly admiring that behavior, openly arguing that Russia should do exactly the same. The hate suddenly turns into envy. The love-hate obsession with America, where every action is condemned publicly and copied privately. Americans did the whole Maduro operation in several hours, he says. Why cannot we then do the same in Armenia then? And finally, there is the personal hypocrisy. Solovyov speaks of war as abstraction. He speaks of operations, of points on a map, red and blue colors, but he does not speak of bodies, coffins, amputations, and burned-out villages. Because he does not pay the price personally. Other people do. If he truly believes in denazifying another country, if he truly thinks new wars are necessary, Then why he is not the first one in line? Why isn't he handed a bent rifle and aluminum vest and just sent to demonstrate this imperial courage personally? I mean, we all know the answer, right? Because he is brave enough only on television under personal Kremlin's protection. Solovyov's rant was not strength, it was not confidence, it was not even a strategy. It was just panic leaking through propaganda. A dog in the corner with nowhere else left to go will show its teeth no matter what, even if this is just a chihuahua. A regime that failed in Ukraine is now threatening others not because it can, but because it does not know what else to say. When humiliation becomes unbearable, fantasies of expansion take its place. Armenia and Central Asia understood the message very clear. This was not the noise, it was a warning. And the world should take it seriously, not because Russia or Putin is powerful, but because desperate regimes are dangerous. Especially those that still believe that violence can restore lost relevance. What Solovyov revealed is simple and terrifying at the same time. The Kremlin has learned absolutely nothing. Not from its failures, not from losses, not from isolation. And that makes every neighbor right to be alarmed. Because when propaganda stops pretending and starts openly discussing who should be next, history tells us only one thing very clearly. This is precisely how disasters begin. Well, there you have it, guys. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. Some of you might know, if you follow me on Instagram, I'm kinda like the sport of powerlifting, bench press, squats, deadlift, so if you want to see my progress, feel free to subscribe to me on Instagram. It's RussianDude23. Well, link is down below, I think. Thanks so much for watching. See you tomorrow.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims on us all they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. We do not believe in ridiculous Russian propaganda.